You classified this planet as what? The alien officer, Lieutenant Varkon, couldn't believe his auditory receptors. The message had come from the highest echelons of the Galactic Council, relayed in the clipped, emotionless tones of an automated system. Earth, the unassuming blue-green sphere they had barely noticed on their initial scans of the solar system, had been labeled a Class 14 Deathworld. Such a designation was typically reserved for planets where survival itself was a near impossibility, places with toxic atmospheres, hostile megafauna, and volatile climates. But Earth? Varkon had visited Earth as part of the initial invasion fleet. It seemed tame by any galactic standard. The inhabitants, while annoyingly resilient, were primitive in their reliance on combustion engines and rudimentary energy sources. Yet here was this message, announcing that Earth's classification was a mistake. They'd missed some crucial factors. The humans, far from being the insignificant creatures they first appeared, were now recognized as among the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Varkon's mandibles clicked in agitation as he paced the command deck of the Aranthal, the flagship of the Vaskari invasion fleet. He glanced at the tactical display, where Earth's image hovered like an accusation. The humans had fought back with a ferocity that took the Vaskari by surprise. The invasion, which was supposed to be a simple conquest, had turned into a protracted war. The humans didn't just fight, they adapted, learned, and retaliated with strategies that defied all logic. The lieutenant growled low in his throat, recalling the first skirmishes. The humans had been vastly outgunned, their primitive technology no match for the Vaskari's advanced weaponry. But instead of fleeing, they dug in. They used their environment in ways the Vaskari had not anticipated, turning cities into death traps, using weather patterns to their advantage, even unleashing biological weapons in the form of microscopic viruses that ravaged Vaskari immune systems. But it wasn't just the humans' ingenuity that had earned Earth its new classification, it was the planet itself. Earth was a world where natural disasters were a constant threat. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Yet the humans not only survived these dangers, they thrived in spite of them. To the Vaskari, who hailed from a planet of stable climates and predictable ecosystems, Earth's unpredictability was nothing short of terrifying. Lieutenant, we've received a new transmission from the Council, one of the junior officers announced, interrupting Varkon's thoughts. The officer's skin had taken on a pale shade, indicating anxiety, a rare emotion among the Vaskari. "Play it," Varkon ordered, though he dreaded what more the Council could have to say. The holographic display flickered before resolving into the form of a high-ranking Vaskari counselor. All Vaskari forces currently engaged in operations on Earth are to retreat immediately. This is not a request. The Council has deemed Earth's inhabitants too dangerous to engage directly. Continued aggression is no longer sanctioned. Varkon's claws clenched involuntarily. Retreat? We are on the verge of... Do not mistake this order as a sign of weakness, Lieutenant. The counselor interrupted, his tone icy. The humans have demonstrated a level of adaptability and ruthlessness that exceeds our worst projections. They are not to be underestimated. The Council has decreed that further direct conflict would be unwise. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Varkon staring at the blank display in disbelief. Retreat? Unwise? The Vaskari were conquerors, not cowards. They had subjugated dozens of worlds, bringing entire civilizations to their knees. To be ordered to retreat was an insult, a stain on the honor of the fleet. "We cannot retreat," Varkon muttered, mostly to himself. "We've invested too much. We are Vaskari, born to conquer." "Sir, the human forces are mobilizing," the tactical officer reported, his voice tinged with unease. "It appears they have detected our hesitation. They're preparing to strike." Varkon's eyes narrowed. If the humans believed the Vaskari would flee with their tails between their legs, they were gravely mistaken. "Prepare all weapon systems. We will meet their attack head-on." The bridge crew sprang into action, but the tension in the air was palpable. Despite their advanced technology and superior firepower, the Vaskari officers had seen firsthand the tenacity of their human adversaries. This would not be a battle easily won. As the humans' ships closed in, Varkon couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in the balance of power. The humans were no longer just another primitive species to be crushed underfoot. They were a threat, one that the Vascari had underestimated for too long. And as the first volleys of energy beams lit up the space between the two fleets, Varkon realized, with a sinking feeling, that perhaps the Council was right to fear these humans. The first exchange of fire was almost ceremonial. Two lines of ships staring each other down, launching volleys of energy that would barely scratch the hulls of their opponents. But the humans, it seemed, were not content with a formal dance. They broke formation, their ships darting in unpredictable patterns, making it difficult for the Vascari gunners to land a solid hit. "Focus fire on the lead ships," Varkon barked, his frustration mounting as the human vessels slipped through their defenses. The humans' tactics were unconventional, chaotic even, but that chaos was effective. Varkon could feel the tension on the bridge as the Vascari crew struggled to keep up. The tactical officer cursed under his breath, his claws flying over the controls. "They're using short-range burst drives to maneuver, sir. It's making our targeting systems lag." "Compensate manually," Varkon ordered, his voice edged with a growl. The humans had no right to be this effective, not against a fleet like his. But their erratic maneuvers were wreaking havoc on the Vascari formation. The Aranthal shuddered as a barrage of missiles slammed into its shields, and Varkon knew it wasn't just luck that was keeping the humans in the fight. "They're closing in on our flanks," the weapons officer warned, his tone tight with concern. "If we don't adjust our formation, they'll surround us." Varkon clenched his mandibles, considering his options. The Vascari had always relied on superior firepower and technology to overwhelm their enemies. But the humans had a different strategy. They didn't fight to overpower. They fought to outthink. The realization hit Varkon like a physical blow. The humans were playing a different game entirely, one that the Vascari hadn't prepared for. "Break formation," Varkon ordered, the words tasting bitter. "All ships are to engage individually. We can't afford to let them outmaneuver us." The order went against everything the Vascari fleet had been trained to do, but there was no other choice. The ships separated, each one becoming a lone wolf in the chaotic void of space. Varkon's own ship, the Aranthal, swung to face the largest of the human vessels, a massive battleship that bristled with makeshift weaponry. "Target their engines," Varkon commanded. "If we can cripple their mobility, we might turn this around." The Aranthal's weapon systems locked onto the battleship's thrusters, and with a single command, they unleashed a barrage of plasma torpedoes. The torpedoes streaked across the blackness of space, closing the distance in seconds. But as they neared the target, the human ship performed an impossible maneuver, spinning on its axis and accelerating directly toward the Aranthal. Varkon's eyes widened in shock. "Evasive maneuvers! Now!" The Aranthal lurched as its engines fired in reverse, trying to put distance between itself and the incoming behemoth. But the human battleship was relentless, its weapons lighting up as it barreled forward. The plasma torpedoes, meant to cripple the human ship, detonated harmlessly in its wake, too slow to catch their agile foe. "Shields at maximum!" Varkon shouted as the battleship's cannons unleashed a torrent of fire. The Aranthal's shields flared under the assault, holding, but only barely. Alarms blared throughout the bridge as damage reports flooded in. Hull breaches, failing systems, and worst of all, morale was slipping. Varkon could feel the fear creeping in among his crew, but there was no time for fear. The humans were relentless, their ships swarming the Vascari like predators sensing weakness. Varkon had to act, and fast. "Prepare to board that ship," Varkon ordered, making a snap decision. The Vascari were masters of close-quarters combat. If they could get inside the human battleship, they could disable it from within. "Send the assault teams. We'll take this fight to them personally." The order was relayed, and within moments the Aranthal's boarding pods were launched. They streaked across the void, small but deadly, latching onto the hull of the human battleship with mechanical precision. Varkon watched the progress on the tactical display, his claws tapping out a nervous rhythm on the armrest of his command chair. The first team breached the human ship, and Varkon leaned forward, eager for the victory he knew was within reach. The humans might be fierce in space, but on the ground, the Vascari were unmatched. They would tear through the human defenders and take control of the ship's systems before the humans even knew what hit them. But as the reports came in from the boarding teams, Varkon's confidence began to waver. The humans had prepared for this too. The corridors of the battleship were a maze of traps and ambush points, and the Vascari were being cut down in waves. Each team that made it deeper into the ship was met with heavier resistance, and the casualty reports began to pile up. "They're ready for us," the tactical officer said, his voice grim. "They knew we would try to board." Varkon's mandibles clicked in frustration. The humans had anticipated every move, countering with strategies that were as brutal as they were effective. The Vascari were losing ground, not just in space but on the very ship they had hoped to conquer. As the Aranthal shook under another barrage of fire from the human battleship, Varkon realized that this was no ordinary enemy. The humans weren't just fighting for victory, they were fighting for survival. And that made them more dangerous than anything the Vascari had ever encountered. Varkon's command chair trembled as another explosion rocked the Aranthal. The ship's hull groaned under the relentless barrage, and Varkon could feel the tension on the bridge reach a fever pitch. The humans had outmaneuvered, outthought, and now they were outgunning them. The realization was as bitter as it was undeniable. The Vascari had underestimated their enemy at every turn, and now they were paying the price. "All remaining ships, fall back to the Aranthal," Varkon commanded, his voice tight with the strain of the situation. "We regroup here and launch a coordinated strike. We cannot let these humans best us." The remaining Vascari vessels moved to obey, but their numbers had dwindled alarmingly. What had once been a mighty fleet, poised to bring Earth to its knees, was now a scattered and desperate force. The humans had not only survived the initial invasion, they had turned it into a counterattack that was pushing the Vascari to the brink of defeat. As the Vascari ships formed up around the Aranthal, Varkon's gaze returned to the tactical display. The human battleship that had proven so formidable was still there, its weapon systems glowing with the ominous promise of more destruction to come. But now there was something else, a strange, distorted signal emanating from the planet below. Varkon's eyes narrowed as he tried to make sense of it. "What is that signal?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," the communications officer replied, his voice edged with fear. It's some kind of transmission, but the frequency is unlike anything we've encountered." "Patch it through," Varkon ordered. If the humans were up to something new, he needed to know what it was. The signal crackled and hissed as it was patched into the bridge's audio system, and then a voice, calm, measured, and unmistakably human, came through. "This is Captain Hayes of the UNS Vengeance. To the Vascari fleet. You've trespassed on our world, attacked our people, and underestimated what we're capable of. This is your only warning. Surrender now, or face the full might of humanity." Varkon's mandibles clicked in disbelief. The audacity of these humans, to issue such a threat when their victory was not yet assured. But as he considered their words, another realization began to dawn on him. The humans had planned this, all of it. The traps, the maneuvers, the ambushes. They were all part of a larger strategy, one designed to lure the Vascari into a final decisive battle. "Sir," the tactical officer said, his voice strained, "that signal. There's more to it. The humans have activated some kind of planetary defense system. We're detecting massive energy spikes from the surface." Varkon's eyes widened as the tactical display updated, showing new contacts rising from the planet's surface. Dozens, then hundreds of them. They were smaller than the human battleships, but their energy signatures were off the charts. These were not mere fighters. They were weapons of mass destruction, and they were all headed straight for the Vascari fleet. "All ships, prepare for..." Varkon's command was cut off as the first wave of human drones slammed into the Vascari formation. The drones detonated on impact, unleashing shock waves of energy that tore through shields and hulls alike. The Aranthal shuddered violently as several nearby ships were ripped apart, their debris scattering through the void. "They're overwhelming us," the tactical officer cried, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms and explosions. "We can't hold out against this." Varkon's mind raced as he searched for a way out, but every option led to the same conclusion. The humans had them cornered. The Vascari were surrounded, outgunned, and outmatched. The drones were closing in, their numbers seemingly endless, and the human battleships were moving to cut off any hope of retreat. "Sir, what do we do?" one of the junior officers asked, his voice trembling with fear. Varkan's mandibles tightened as he made the only decision he could. "We fight," he said, his voice a low growl. "To the last ship, to the last breath. We fight." The Vaskari ships opened fire with everything they had, unleashing a storm of energy beams and plasma torpedoes. But the human drones were too fast, too numerous. They weaved through the Vaskari defenses, closing in on their targets with deadly precision. The Aranthal rocked under the onslaught, its shields flickering and failing as the drones pounded it relentlessly. Varkan watched in grim silence as the Vaskari fleet was systematically dismantled, ship by ship. The Aranthal's hull began to crack, the internal systems short-circuiting as fires raged through the corridors. The bridge was filled with smoke and the smell of burning electronics, but Varkan remained in his command chair, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The human battleships were moving in for the kill, their weapons primed and ready to finish off the last of the Vaskari. Varkan knew there was no escape, no victory to be had, but he would not surrender. The Vaskari did not surrender. As the final wave of drones descended upon the Aranthal, Varkan closed his eyes, a single thought echoing in his mind. The humans were right to be feared. They had turned a Deathworld into their fortress, and in doing so, they had become the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. The Aranthal's hull buckled and shattered under the impact, and the command deck was engulfed in flames. Varkan's last breath was filled with the bitter taste of defeat, and then there was nothing.